What are mans? It's Taco Mans. Today I'm going to show you step by step how easy it is to change the oil on my second generation Toyota Tacoma. Let's talk about it. I've been doing my own oil changes for probably 10 years now, and the Tacoma is so easy for a few reasons. Number one, no car jack or jack stands needed. I've owned a sedan most of my life, and it's nice to not have to raise the front end for an oil change. Number two is the filter location. It's sitting right beside the engine. You can see it at the bottom of the screen. Super easy to access and remove. Number three is particular to other Tacomas. This is a second generation Tacoma, and you don't need to remove the skid plate to access the oil drain plug, unlike third generation Tacomas where you have to take that extra step. Okay, here's what I'm using for this job. Right off the bat, I had the wrong oil sitting on my table. The correct oil is SAE 5W30. It says that on the manual and the oil cap as well. I have a funnel. Mine happens to have measurements, which do come in handy, but you can use any funnel. I have an oil filter. I like to use OEM filters from Toyota. They're actually cheaper than some higher end filters from my local Canadian Tire. I also have a new OEM drain plug washer, which I like to replace every oil change. I have my 3/8 inch wrench and a 14mm socket for the drain plug. I also have a flathead screwdriver, a small tin can, and a microfiber cloth. Lastly, I'm using an old cardboard box to lay on, and I have my oil drain pan. To find the oil drain plug, I started at the passenger side and made my way under the truck. Right in front of the first crossmember, you'll find the drain plug pretty clearly. Here's a slightly different angle which shows where the front wheel is in relation to the drain plug. It's not too far back at all. So I took my wrench and just broke the bolt loose. Once I made sure it was loosened properly, I placed my drain pan directly underneath, then I unscrewed it by hand while applying upward pressure. That way the oil doesn't trickle out while I'm unscrewing. Once I felt the drain plug was fully unscrewed, I quickly pulled it out to minimize spilling. I noticed right away that the old washer was still attached to the vehicle. It's important to pry it off and not add a second washer on top, because that will cause a leak. While the oil was still draining, I went ahead and inspected the drain plug. It looks a bit old, but the threads and hex head are still in good condition, so there's no need to change it. I also inspected the old washer, and although it looks fine, I decided to change it to a new one anyways. Now I moved on to change the filter. I started by placing my tin can underneath. I needed this can because once you unscrew the old filter, oil will flow from the filter into the catcher and drain down below where this rubber cap is. So I pried off the cap with a screwdriver, being careful not to drop it, then put it aside. I used a rag to grip the filter and was able to break it loose without much trouble. At this point, oil started dripping into the can below. I fully unscrewed the oil filter and put it aside. Then I carefully removed the tin can, being careful not to spill any oil. I checked the oil filter to make sure the O-ring is still attached. I'm just removing it so the camera can see. If the O-ring isn't here, it's attached to the vehicle. It's important to remove it or the new filter won't seal properly. Back under the truck, I let the oil drain for at least 5 minutes. Now I'm ready to reinstall my oil drain plug with the new washer. I just hand tightened it and finished it off with my wrench. The torque spec for this calls for 30 foot-pounds. Now I've never used the torque wrench for my oil drain plugs, but I've never had a problem with leaking or over-tightening, so I think I'm good. Now that that's finished, I'm done crawling around under the truck. So I opened up my new filter. I believe they're slightly pre-oiled, but I always add more, and the instructions on the side call for it too. Installing the filter is very simple. I just screwed it on and hand tightened it. Then I used my rag to tighten it some more. It looks like I'm overdoing it, but it was just slippery because of all the oil. You definitely don't want to over tighten the filter or it'll be really hard to remove next time. At this point, I was ready to add oil. I unscrewed the oil cap, grabbed my funnel, and started pouring. I used an older jug of oil from my last oil change, so it was pretty useful to be able to measure when I moved on to the second jug. The manual calls for 5.2 liters or 5.5 quarts, so I gave it exactly that. After adding the oil, I reinstalled the oil cap, hopped in the driver's seat, and started it up. While the truck was on, I double-checked the oil drain plug underneath for leaks, then drove it around the block. After I came back, I popped the hood again and checked the oil dipstick. The oil is right below the dot, and since I measured before pouring, I'm pretty confident it has the right amount of oil, and that's how I changed the oil for my Toyota Tacoma. This normally takes me about 20 minutes when I'm not recording. How long does it take you to change your oil? Let me know in the comments. Please like, share, subscribe, and vibe. I'll catch you on the next Taco Man's out. Peace.